development, economic cooperation that will lead to strategic partnership of our two countries. So my country um, is expecting that our bilateral ties that were founded by our forefathers, our founding fathers, Mwalimu Nyerere and Mahatma Gandhi, is going to continue decades after decade and continue with strength.
Imagine waking up one
Thank you.
morning and
Thank you
seeing
very much.
headlines like this. Tanzania signs $15 billion oil deal with India, rejects America. What? How did this happen? Why did Tanzania make such a bold choice? And what does this mean for global power dynamics, Africa's future, and America's influence on the continent? This is not just another economic story. This is a geopolitical earthquake. Because Tanzania, a nation rich in natural resources, strategically located on Africa's east coast, just made a decision that will shock the world. America, long considered the default partner for Africa's energy projects, is suddenly left on the sidelines. India, hungry for resources and expanding its global influence, swoops in with a massive $15 billion deal. And this isn't just about money. It's about sovereignty, strategy, and global alliances. Welcome back to Iazicho Africa, the channel that tells Africa's story the way it deserves to be told: bold, honest, and unfiltered. Today's episode: Tanzania ditches America for massive $15 billion India oil deal collision. Stay tuned, because this story will change how you see Africa's rising power. To understand why this deal is historic, we need to understand Tanzania itself. Population: over 60 million. Strategic location: borders the Indian Ocean, linking Africa to Asia. Abundant natural resources: oil, natural gas, minerals. Stable democracy compared to regional neighbors. Growing infrastructure: ports, roads, and pipelines. Tanzania has been quietly positioning itself as Africa's next energy and logistics hub. Its oil reserves in the southern and central regions are now drawing the attention of global superpowers. For decades, America was the default partner for such projects. U.S. oil companies often had preferential access, thanks to decades of diplomatic ties, military partnerships, and development aid. But Africa is changing. Tanzania, under its current leadership, is asserting independence. It no longer wants to be dictated to. It no longer wants to prioritize Western interests over its own economic growth. And India, a rising global power with a growing energy appetite, recognized this opening. India's interest in Africa has been increasing steadily over the past decade. Investments in infrastructure, energy, and mining. Bilateral trade agreements with multiple African nations. Port developments and logistics collaborations. Strategic alliances with East African nations. Why Tanzania? Oil reserves. The $15 billion deal secures access to Tanzania's growing oil reserves. Geopolitical positioning. Tanzania's coastline opens up access to the Indian Ocean. Trade synergy. Tanzania can supply India with energy, while India can invest in pipelines, refineries, and infrastructure. Soft power. India has cultural and diplomatic ties with East Africa, making negotiations smoother. The deal is a win-win. Tanzania gets a massive investment, infrastructure development, and job creation. India secures energy resources critical to its growing economy. America, however, is left reeling, surprised that Tanzania would choose India over a traditional Western ally. America's approach to Africa has often been conditional. Offers aid tied to political or human rights stipulations. Prioritizes strategic interests over economic independence. Focuses on military alliances more than infrastructure or energy growth. Tanzania's leadership realized that a purely American deal might limit its sovereignty, impose unwanted conditions, and prioritize foreign interests over domestic needs. India's proposal, in contrast, offered a straightforward $15 billion investment, minimal political conditions, full control over domestic infrastructure, long-term energy partnerships benefiting Tanzania first. The leadership saw the opportunity and said yes, a move that signals a shift in African diplomacy. Africa chooses partnerships that serve its people first. The $15 billion deal is massive. Here's what it means: new refineries, pipelines, and storage facilities. upgraded ports to export oil efficiently, roads and logistics networks connecting oil fields to coastal ports, thousands of new jobs in construction, engineering, logistics, and administration opportunities for local businesses to supply goods and services. Domestic oil reserves will be developed to fuel local industries. Reduces dependence on imported fuels by choosing India. Tanzania signals to other nations that it is open to fair, mutually beneficial investment potential to attract China, UAE, and European partners in complementary projects. Tanzania's decision doesn't just affect economics. It changes global power equations. A traditional ally, sidelined in a massive energy deal, must rethink its Africa strategy. Signals to other African nations that American offers may not always be the best. Secures energy for its growing economy. Strengthens its foothold in East Africa. Counters China's growing influence in Africa. Tanzania's leadership demonstrates that African nations can choose partners based on their national interest, not historical ties or pressure. Other East African nations may follow Tanzania's lead. Countries like Kenya, Uganda, and Mozambique could leverage competitive partnerships. Global energy markets are interconnected. Here's why Tanzania's decision shakes things up. Supply chains. India secures energy that may have otherwise gone through global oil markets dominated by Western companies. Economic alliances. Strengthens India-Africa ties, creating a new trade corridor in the Indian Ocean. Strategic competition. America now faces increasing competition from India in a region it historically dominated. Diplomatic signaling. African nations realize that they have negotiating power. This is a turning point, not just for Tanzania, but for Africa's position in the global economy. While Tanzania has made a bold move, America still has options. Less conditionality, more infrastructure and technology transfer. Engage other East African nations to balance influence. Recognize that African nations will increasingly choose based on national benefit, not loyalty. But for now, America is on the sidelines, watching India secure one of the largest oil deals in East African history. India isn't just buying oil. It is building influence in Africa, strategic ports, refineries, and economic ties. Diversifying energy sources, reduces dependence on Middle East and global oil fluctuations. Strengthening diplomatic presence. India now has a stronger voice in the Indian Ocean region. This deal is a masterstroke of energy diplomacy. India secures critical resources while creating long-term goodwill with an emerging African power. Locally, this deal translates to millions of Tanzanians benefiting indirectly from jobs, infrastructure, and economic growth. A stronger energy sector that supports local industries. Modernized ports and logistics networks that boost trade across the East African region. Increased confidence in government leadership and strategic planning. This is a nation-building moment, not just an economic transaction. Africa is learning a key lesson. Choose partners who prioritize Africa's interests first. Diversify partnerships to avoid over-reliance on a single superpower. Use resources as leverage, not just for foreign consumption. Assert sovereignty and negotiate strategically. Tanzania just showed the continent how it's done: bold, strategic, and forward-looking. The $15 billion deal is just the beginning. Tanzania could become a regional oil hub. India could deepen its influence across East Africa. Other nations might offer competitive deals. Africa could shift towards multipolar partnerships. The global map of energy and influence is changing, and Tanzania is at the forefront. So what does this mean? Tanzania ditched America for a deal that serves its people first. India wins a massive strategic and economic foothold. Africa proves it can negotiate on its own terms. The global energy market shifts towards multipolarity. This is not just business. This is diplomacy, strategy, and power. And here on Eazicho Africa, we celebrate Africa's bold moves, its sovereignty, and its rising influence on the world stage. Tanzania's $15 billion oil deal is proof that Africa is no longer waiting for permission. Africa is taking its destiny into its own hands. If you're excited about Africa rising, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to Eazicho Africa. The story of African power is just beginning, and we'll bring it to you first.